Good day everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today we are looking at the visuals um, of our teleportation system that we did in previous video. If you want to follow along, remember to go one video back to actually implement all the systems and blueprints that we have created for the teleportation. But with no further ado, let's get into it. What we're going to be making today is something that you're going to be seeing on the screen right now, where it's basic line that's coming out of a teleportation hand and an end obstacle object that you can manually change out yourself with your own personal game object that you want, and also with your own materials or shaders that you want to create. So let's get into it. I'm going to start off by creating one variable, and it's going to be called Spline Mesh. And we're going to change the variable from being a Boolean to, so I have to make sure, yeah, Boolean to Spline Mesh component, and we're gonna make it an array. And before we actually do any blueprints in the event craft, we are gonna be creating two new functions just to keep stuff a bit more clean. First function is gonna be arc spline update. The next function is gonna be clear arc. And this is gonna be handling all the visuals, and this is just gonna be clearing all the arrays that we have. So we're gonna actually start in the spline arc update at the beginning, and we're gonna be needing two variables on the input. First variable that we're gonna need is a Boolean. We're just gonna call that found valid location. And the second variable on the input side that we're going to be needing is going to be spline points. And we're going to be making spline points a vector and also an array. Okay, after that we are going to take found valid location and we're going to feed it into a branch. And this is just to make sure that the visuals only show up when the end locations actually add the end locations actually where we need it. You can also take the false value and create another visual for that if you want to. We're mainly going to be sitting on the true value today, but maybe in the future I'll show you how to do it. So from the true value, we're going to make a for each loop. And we're going to feed it in the spline points. Trying to keep stuff neat. From the spline points, we are going to make a loop body. Going to go to add spline point. Just drag in the spline. Oh, we don't actually have a spline yet. Oh, sorry, forgot. On the right hand or wherever you placed it, just bring in a spline. Call it whatever you want. From there, it's going to drag in the spline that we just created. And we're going to say add spline point. And going to be feeding the position of each point. And from there, on complete, we're going to set spline point type. Remember to say set spline point type and not set spline points. And that's going to be on the complete. And where it's going to get this value is actually going to be from here at the last index. Okay. From here, we are actually going to see how many spline points there are by bringing the spline point and get number of spline points. And why we need this is for a loop, for a for loop. Not for a for each loop, but just a for loop. And first value is going to be 0, but the last value is going to be number of spline points minus 2. Why we're saying minus 2 is because we're going to have an artifact at the end of the teleportation that's going to represent where exactly you want to teleport to. If you do a direct, this is just for visual sakes, minus 2, it's going to be feeding directly into the object that you want and not going to be colliding with everything. Okay, so this is where the important part actually comes in, where we're going to be covering the visual aspect and actually setting all of that up. This is where a lot of things is going to be changing for your own personal preference. So we're going to go from loop body. I'm gonna say add spline mesh renderer. Oh, spline mesh component. Sorry. There we go. Add spline mesh component. And it needs a relevant transform. So we're just gonna make a transform. Make transform. And we don't actually change anything here. Okay, so from here we are gonna feed it into that variable that we just created, this array. Do a get, and we're gonna say add. And it will add everything individually. And then from there, we're just gonna be going to set start and end. Set start and end. As you can see, there is actually a few values that we gonna be needing. I do apologize. There's a few values that we're gonna be needing, and to get all of these values, we're gonna be generating it from the for each loop on the index. So from here, we are gonna actually just gonna make a connection to the other side to all the values that we're gonna be requiring, just so that everything looks nice and neat. Okay, so from here we actually need a copy of the library of all the values. So we're gonna do a get, and we're gonna say get a copy, and we're just gonna be feeding in that value, and that's gonna be our first point of start position. The next one is gonna be it's gonna be, we're gonna get a reference of the spline, and we're gonna be get tangent at spline point, and at which spline point we're gonna be getting it, we'll be grabbing it from the index, and that would be that one's value. Okay. The end position, we're also going to be grabbing from a spline point. And we're going to also be getting the exact same get tangent at spline point, but from the point index we're actually going to be grabbing the point index and adding a 1, because we don't want for the endpoints we don't want the point we are right now, we want 1 ahead, because that's going to be connecting the 2 points. And from there we're just going to be making it end position. And for the last position we're also be doing the exact same by getting a reference or getting a copy of the index, and also using the +1 that we created in the previous one, and that's going to be the end point, the last value that we need to actually create. Okay, we just quickly double check on all things here. Okay, everything is good. For now we are actually just going to add a small code to the false. So what we're going to be doing here is actually we're going to take a spline point and we're going to clear it. From here we're going to add that's weird. Okay, from here we're going to add a new point. The new point that we're going to be getting is a reference to the spline, and we're just going to say get world location. Then we're also going to be doing another add, and from there we're going to take the spline reference, going to say get forward vector. We're going to multiply that with a float. I would say about 20. We're just going to be adding 2 vectors together. Those 2, adding it there, and then it will just feed back into there. Okay, so this is the basic code for the visual aspect. But if you play right now, there is actually no visuals, because when we created add spline mesh component, if you actually click on it, you'll see there's actually a few options in the details that you actually have to activate, like the mesh itself, that I'm just going to be making beam mesh. Gonna give it a blue shader that actually likes to have like a blinking thing, and just have to make sure about all the other settings. Yes. Underneath the forward vector, you'll see one arrow. Press on it. Start scale. We actually want to change that a bit higher because the item that I'm using is actually pretty small, so we're just scaling it up a bit. End scale, we are also just going to be scaling it up a bit. You don't have to do this if your models are up to scale. And then the spline boundary max, I'm just going to change that to 1. Okay, that's everything that you had to do to actually get the visuals. The last thing that I want to go and look at is actually the spline mesh itself. There is a few options that I just want to change. First option is definitely overriding constraints. And then also, oh no, that's it. Great. Going back to the viewport, just have to make sure the spline is zeroed out. Perfect. And if I press play, as you can see right now, at the moment there's still just the spline previous spline visual. Now the teleportation keeps on working, but the visuals itself doesn't actually show up. Oh, we still need to make it clear. Oh, there's stuff that we also have to do in the event graph. But before we actually go there, I'm just actually gonna be deactivating the visuals that we have right now. In the clear arc, it's pretty easy. It's just clearing spline mesh variable. So what we're gonna be saying is destroy mesh. Destroy component. And just hook up the spline mesh and the variable. After here, we are just gonna make a clear. It will clear all the values. And the last thing that we'll have to do is grabbing our spline mesh object, a reference to it, and we're just gonna say clear spline point. Okay, and make sure it updates the spline. If we go back to the event graph, we are going to be using event tick. Just gonna make a sequence just so it doesn't screw up with anything that we have done in the past. Drag that up there. Should definitely organize this a bit more. Okay. So the very first thing that we're going to be doing is we are going to be wait. Oh, we're just going to be editing this. Sorry, I forgot that we actually created that in the previous video. But there is something that we have to put in between that, and that is the clear clear arc. I'm just actually going to drag it from here. Okay. Very quickly see. I don't think anything actually changed except right about here. What we're going to be doing is actually just taking all of these values, moving it up a bit, and I am going to add a sequence here. With the first one, it's just going to be the teleportation. The second one, it's going to be setting a getting the arc spline update, setting all of that up, all the values is being feeded from the line trace that we did in the previous video. And the very last thing that we're going to be doing is making an endpoint by actually going to our root. We're going to add a mesh. Just going to keep it as it is, and I'm just going to change the end result looks. Scale it down to 0.5, 0.5 by 0.5, and you can call it whatever you want. Okay, just change material a bit. This is your own preference of what you want at the end position. I'm just gonna be using some of the default stuff. I'm gonna add a new point to the sequencer, and we are actually gonna be taking that end position, set world location, put it in there, and the end location is just gonna be the trace location. No, nav location, sorry. Okay, there is a few settings that I forgot to actually tell you to set up, and that is on the set spline point type. You should change it from local to curve clamp. The next one is remember to actually make the manual attachment, because we're actually doing it manually here. And also, if you actually press on the mesh component, should remember to make it movable. The last thing that I just made a mix up on is the end positions. The return value should go to those two, should just switch around. That's it. Now if we quickly test everything, as you can see, it works perfectly. Okay. The last thing that I actually want to do is with the circle. At the moment it's gonna keep on following me and keep on showing up. So the thing that we want to do, set visible, not set active, sorry. As you can see, it will only show up once it's the teleport is active, and will disappear once you teleport it. Okay, that's the aspect of visuals. I hope this helped you. Sorry for being it so long, but that's the base system that I'm using. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Remember to like and subscribe if you think these tutorials are educational. Subscribe for more content in the future, and I'll see you all in the next video.